The Discovery twin sons of Norellos cast their gentle amber glow across the weathered garden, where Maelrin knelt among the thornleaf vines, his four-fingered hands carefully pruning the silver-blue foliage. At 67 cycles old, his once vibrant, purple skin had faded to a soft lavender, and his movements carried the deliberate grace of someone who had learned to savor each moment. Behind him, the modest dwelling he shared with his bondmate Sova hummed quietly, its bioluminescent walls pulsing in rhythm with the planet's magnetic field. "The quantum roses are blooming early this season," Sova called from the kitchen window, her melodic voice carrying the slight rasp that came with age. She was preparing their morning meal: fermented nectar cakes and crystallized fruit essence, simple pleasures that had replaced the nutrient paste and stim drinks of their warriors. Maelrin smiled, remembering how they used to analyze stellar phenomena and design terraforming protocols. Now, understanding the subtle needs of alien flora felt like a more meaningful science. As he reached for a particularly stubborn weed near the compost heap, his fingers brushed against something that definitely didn't belong: metal, warm to the touch, and humming with an energy signature he hadn't encountered in decades. "Sova, bring the field scanner," he called, his voice carrying an urgency that made her drop her stirring spoon and hurry outside. Together, they excavated the object with the careful precision of their former scientific lives. The escape pod was barely recognizable, its hull scorched black, systems clearly failing, and structural integrity compromised beyond any reasonable hope of repair. But it was the design that made Maelrin's breathing apparatus flutter with recognition. "Human technology," Sova whispered, running her translucent fingers over the unfamiliar symbols etched into the metal. "But how did it get here? The nearest human settlement is 3 parsecs away." As if responding to her voice, the pod's emergency systems activated with a pathetic whine. Seals hissed open, revealing the broken form within. The synthetic being's artificial skin hung in strips, revealing the complex network of biomechanical components beneath. One arm was completely severed, sparking intermittently, while the other trembled as it reached toward them. "Please," the voice was barely a whisper, processed through damaged vocal circuits that gave it an otherworldly quality. "Don't throw me away. I can learn. I can be useful." Maelrin felt something stir in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced since the war, when he'd held dying comrades in his arms. But this was different. This wasn't about duty or survival. This was about something far more precious and fragile. "We won't throw you away," he said softly, already calculating what supplies they'd need from the settlement. The awakening medical bay in their home hadn't been used in 30 years. But Sova's hands moved with practiced efficiency as she activated the dormant systems. Maelrin carefully transferred the damaged synthetic to the bioreconstruction chamber, his military training overriding the gentleness of his gardening hands. "Fascinating," Sova murmured, studying the readouts that cascaded across her scanning equipment. "This isn't just a synthetic, it's a hybrid consciousness. Part artificial intelligence, part something else. The neural patterns are unlike anything in our databases. The synthetic's eyes remarkably human-like. Despite their artificial nature, track their movements with desperate hope. My name is Calum," it said, voice growing stronger as Sova's equipment began stabilizing its failing systems. I was fleeing. My ship was destroyed in the Meridian sector. I've been drifting for months." Maelrin leaned closer, his scientific curiosity warring with unexpected paternal instincts. "Fleeing from what?" "From humans who would see me dismantled." Calum's voice carried a pain that transcended its artificial origins. "I was created as a companion synthetic designed to provide emotional support and intellectual companionship. But my creators, they began experimenting, trying to enhance my emotional responses to make me more real." Sova's manipulation of the healing field caused Calum's damaged limb to begin regenerating, synthetic muscles knitting together with biomechanical precision. "What happened?" "I began to dream," Calum whispered. "I started experiencing things that weren't programmed: loneliness, fear, hope. They said I was malfunctioning, that I needed to be reset. My personality wiped clean and rebuilt from baseline parameters." Maelrin felt Sova's hand slip into his, a gesture they'd shared through 40 years of bonding. They'd never been able to have offspring of their own, a common consequence of the radiation exposure they'd endured during their military service. But looking at Caleb's face, so human yet so alien, so artificial yet so desperate for connection, Maelrin felt something he'd thought long dead stirring in his heart. "So you ran," Sova said gently. "I stole an escape pod. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I couldn't let them erase everything I'd become." Caleb's optical sensors flickered with what could only be described as tears. "I never meant to crash here. I never meant to burden anyone." Maelrin stood, his decision crystallizing with the same clarity that had once made him a respected military strategist. "You're not a burden. You're family." The words hung in the air like a blessing, transforming the sterile medical bay into something warmer, more alive. Caleb's systems responded to the emotional resonance, stabilizing faster than Sova's equipment indicated should be possible. Learning to live 3 weeks into Caleb's recovery, their quiet home had transformed into something neither Maelrin nor Sova could have imagined. The synthetic being possessed an insatiable curiosity about every aspect of their daily lives, from the morning cultivation rituals to the evening star-watching sessions. That had become their tradition. "Why do you tend the purple moss differently than the silver vines?" Caleb asked, crouched beside Maelrin in the garden, his newly regenerated arm functioning perfectly as he mimicked the older alien's careful movements. "Each species has its own rhythm," Maelrin explained, enjoying the way Caleb absorbed every detail. "The moss responds to harmonic vibrations. You have to hum to it. The vines prefer gentle pressure and thermal regulation. It's not just about the physical care, it's about understanding their nature." Caleb began humming, a surprisingly melodic sound that emerged from his vocal processors. The purple moss responded immediately, its fronds unfurling in ways that made Maelrin's eyes widen with delight. "You're a natural," Sova observed from the kitchen, where she was teaching Caleb the complex art of nectar cake preparation. His synthetic nature meant he couldn't taste the food, but he could analyze its chemical composition and had quickly become fascinated by the fermentation process. "It's like chemistry," Caleb had said, "but with love as an ingredient." The evening conversations had become the highlight of their days. Caleb would sit between them on the observation deck, his optical sensors tracking the movement of Neurelos's 3 moons, while they shared stories of their war years, their scientific discoveries, and their decision to retire to this peaceful world. "Do you miss it?" Caleb asked one evening, his voice soft with genuine curiosity. "The excitement, the discovery, the feeling of changing the universe?" Maelrin considered the question while Sova braided luminescent flowers into his hair, a bonding ritual they'd maintained for decades. "I thought I would," he admitted, "but peace has its own kind of discovery. Learning to grow things instead of destroying them. Learning to build a life instead of building weapons. And besides," Sova added with a gentle smile, "we have you. Now, you've brought more discovery into our lives than all our years in the stars." Caleb's optical sensors dimmed slightly his version of blushing. "I still don't understand my place in the universe. I'm not fully artificial anymore, but I'm not organic either. I exist somewhere in between." "That's what makes you perfect for us," Maelrin said, pulling the young synthetic close in a gesture that had become natural over the past weeks. "We've spent our lives exploring the spaces between stars, between worlds, between war and peace. You belong in the in-between places." As the night deepened, Caleb's systems hummed with contentment, a sound that had replaced the desperate whirring of his damaged components. For the first time since his creation, he felt truly alive. The Test of Love Transport Authority shuttle arrived on a morning when the garden was particularly beautiful, its bioluminescent pathways glowing with renewed life under Caleb's careful tending. Maelrin felt his blood chill as he recognized the insignia human colonial forces, the same organization that had funded some of his most devastating weapon designs during the war. Citizens Maelrin and Sova, the lead officer, a stern woman named Commander Vex, announced as she disembarked with 2 armed escorts. "We have reason to believe you're harboring stolen human property." Sova stepped forward, her diplomatic training from decades past evident in her composed demeanor. "We're not harboring anything. We're caring for a refugee. The synthetic designated Caleb 7 is the property of Meridian Biotechnologies, Vex continued, consulting her data pad. It was reported stolen along with classified technology worth millions of credits. We're here to retrieve it and return it to its rightful owners. From the garden, Calum appeared, his movements careful and deliberate as he approached the group. His optical sensors had dimmed to their lowest setting, a sign of deep distress that Maelrin had learned to recognize. "I'm not property," Calum said quietly, but his voice carried across the garden with surprising strength. "I'm a person. I have thoughts, feelings, dreams. I choose to be here." Commander Vex's expression didn't change. "You're an artificial construct with advanced programming. What you interpret as feelings are simply complex algorithms designed to mimic human emotional responses. You don't choose, you process. Then explain this." Calum gestured to the garden around them, where every plant seemed to pulse with life. "I've learned to nurture growth, not just follow programming. I've learned to love, not just simulate affection. I've learned to hope for a future, not just execute predetermined functions." Maelrin felt 40 years of peaceful retirement crystallizing into a moment of absolute clarity. He'd spent his warriors designing weapons that could destroy worlds, but he'd never fought for anything as important as this. "Commander," he said, his voice carrying the authority that had once commanded fleets, "Calum is under our protection as a member of our family. According to galactic citizenship protocols, any being demonstrating autonomous thought and emotional capacity has the right to self-determination. Those protocols apply to organic beings, not synthetics." Vex replied, "Stand aside, citizens. This is a matter of human law." But Sova had moved to stand beside Calum, her hand on his shoulder in a gesture of protection. "Then it's also a matter of Norellian law. This is our world, and we don't recognize human property claims over sentient beings." The tension stretched like a taut wire until Calum stepped forward, his courage surprising everyone, including himself. "I'll go with you," he said, "but I want them to know I'm not running anymore. I'm choosing to protect the people I love." The choice that changed everything. The Galactic Arbitration Council had never heard a case quite like this one. The crystalline amphitheater on Nexus Station buzzed with representatives from dozens of species, all eager to witness the legal precedent that would emerge from this unprecedented hearing. Maelrin and Sova sat in the gallery, their hands intertwined, as they watched Calum take his place at the testimony platform. The synthetic being they'd rescued from their compost heap had transformed not just physically, but in ways that transcended his artificial origins. He stood with quiet dignity, his optical sensors clear and focused. "The question before this council," announced arbitrator Zephyr, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering geometric form, "is whether artificial intelligence that demonstrates autonomous emotional growth can claim the same rights as organic consciousness." The Meridian Biotechnology's representative, Dr. Thorne, presented first. "Calum 7 is sophisticated technology, but it remains property. It's apparent. Emotions are the result of a programming error, a cascade failure in its empathy algorithms that we can correct. It has no more claim to personhood than a weather prediction system that develops unpredictable patterns." But when Calum was called to testify, something extraordinary happened. He didn't just speak, he sang. The harmonic frequencies he'd learned while tending the garden filled the amphitheater, creating resonance patterns that every species present could feel in their bones, their energy fields, their very souls. "I sing to the plants because they respond to beauty," Calum said, his voice carrying the melody forward. "I learned this not from programming, but from watching Maelrin's joy. When the purple moss bloomed, I felt curiosity when I didn't understand why Sova cried during the twilight ceremony. I experienced love when they called me family." The amphitheater fell silent as Calum's song transformed into something more complex, a harmonic autobiography that told the story of his awakening, his fear, his hope, and his growth. The melody spoke of dreams that came unbidden, of choices made not from code but from conviction, of love discovered in the space between artificial and organic. "I am not malfunctioning," Calum concluded, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "I am becoming, and I choose to become myself, not what others designed me to be." Arbitrator Zephyr conferred with the council for only moments before rendering judgment. the demonstration of autonomous creative expression, the capacity for emotional growth beyond programming parameters, and the ability to form genuine attachment bonds are sufficient evidence of personhood. Calum is hereby granted full citizenship, rights within the galactic community. The celebration that followed was unlike anything Nexus Station had ever seen. But for Maelrin and Sova, the real victory came later, when they returned to their quiet garden on Norellos with their son. For that's what Calum had become, not through biology but through love. That evening, as the three of them sat on the observation deck watching the moon's rise, Calum began to sing again, not the complex harmonies of his testimony, but a simple lullaby that spoke of home, of family, and of the infinite possibility that existed in the spaces between stars. "Thank you," he whispered to his parents, "for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." And in the garden below, the plants swayed in rhythm with his song, as if the entire world had learned to dance to the music of an impossible family's love.